All right, folks, I'm so excited to welcome the amazing Toth to the stage today to share her magic with this whole crowd that's gathered. Nick is an incredible woman who I've just gotten to know over the past few months even. And it's been such a joy getting to know you, Nick, and I'm so glad you're here and get to share your wisdom with all of us as we're celebrating whatever this new thing is that we're stepping into. So welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And I'm so glad we could still make this work. I know it's been really crazy with stuff that's come up, and yet you're still here. So before we talk about that, I'd love to know, can you just introduce yourself? Tell folks who are listening who might not know you yet about who you are, a little bit about your journey.
Yes, of course. So my name is Toth, and I've been a weight loss expert for women, for professional women for the last 8 years, helping women move away from the typical diet approaches and really be able to release extra weight through stepping into a different level of consciousness and awareness and doing the inner work. Because anything in our external circumstances, including how our body is and our weight and everything else, is a reflection of our internal state. And this is something I'm so passionate about, because this is something I was completely not aware of and cost me like a good decade of work and effort and money down the drain to figure that out. So yeah.
Wow. And you did. And you've been helping so many people around the globe. It's amazing. And so what are you passionate about right now?
Right now, actually, my passion, that's something I'm really passionate about all the time. Just like even talking about how we can change our inner world and how we can change our external world by paying attention to our inner world and actually looking at where our emotions are taking us, what is present in the moment, to let us guide where we get to go next.
Wow. Because that's not what you see on the weight loss commercials.
That is not. It's actually, I interviewed one of my clients. I interview all my clients after the program. And one of the things that she said at the interview is, I was like, what would you say about this program? She's like, it's not what you think it is. I'm like, that's right. That's right. We do things differently.
Yep. I hear you. That's so cool. So right now we've gathered together this amazing group of listeners from all over the world who have been experiencing their own version of, I'm going to say, their own version of what life has been like over the past couple of years with however COVID has impacted them. In Bali, it's been very different than it has been in many places that we've traveled or we've lived before. But either way, you can still feel this, like there's collective trauma. I think a lot of big emotions that were like oftentimes just trapped inside as we were physically trapped inside our houses, a lot of stress on our bodies, a lot of different eating habits developed, a lot of different relationship habits developed, a lot of patterns that I think a lot of people just have felt really stuck. And it's like, oh, there's something new going on now. I know there's a whole new wave of COVID going through China and US and all of that. And it's, I know it's happening. And at the same time, there's a different energy that I feel like is happening around the world where it's not as fearful. It's not as fear-based. It's not as crazy as it was when it first started or over the past couple of years. So with that being said, I have talked to so many people who are like, oh my gosh, it feels like I'm emerging. It feels like I'm coming out of my house more. I'm meeting people, and it feels even more challenging than it used to for a variety of reasons. But there's this collective momentum of like, okay, let's go figure this thing out. So as people are coming out, I just want to know, like, what, from your perspective, how can they step into this new world with new confidence or feeling like they can really shine when it's been so, I'm going to say, claustrophobic over the past couple of years?
It's a great question. And like you, who spent the pandemic in Bali, I spent it in Thailand, which was also a little bubble. So we've been kind of fortunate enough to be in a sort of isolated bubble where we didn't really feel the impact. We felt the impact and the collective impact, but in a different way. Yes. Now, I just arrived in Hungary a couple of days ago because my grandma was fallen ill, and I literally just flew back to my hometown very, very quickly. And I see how people are really how to say, they're really afraid. Like they're afraid to go out, especially elderly, and there's also so much fear embedded in them that they're really afraid of doing anything and everything. Wow. And people have, like, things have changed. People have there's been a lot of divorces. There's been a lot of separations because people have been, locked in a room or in an apartment in a small place with an entire family.
Yeah. And oftentimes without any like healthy tools for how to navigate that closeness and that connection, all the emotions that come up. And
yeah. And a lot of people, like, let's be honest, a lot of people don't have the tools. Like everything's changed. Eating habits have changed. A lot of people put on weight, and a lot of people have, like, as a collective, we've been really forced to look at our shit. Like, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Whether it's interpersonal or personal or, all kinds of relationships, we've been forced to look at the things that we have not looked at or ignored, or we were too afraid to look at because it's in your face now, right? Like the relationship issues with your partner or with your kids, or the lack of connection with your kids, or just everything has been highlighted. And so when someone does self-development work, you develop the tools to kind of navigate and have better communication and all of those things, and that can make that easier. But I'm seeing that that's not majority of the population.
Yeah. So as you're seeing this, especially with your view returning to Hungary right now, what if you could give a tool or a couple tools, depending, to people who are in this place, and it's just like stepping out into this place that it may have some fear behind it. How can they really begin to take that first step and do so with confidence?
And you mean okay, so I'll talk about an internal and maybe an external. And so when it comes to saying, like, improving relationships with people around you, I think number one is really just looking at your own stuff. Anything that anyone says or does to you, it isn't necessarily to you, it happens. It's just happening. But we have an interpretation of how that's being done to us, which means we're not actually taking responsibility for what is happening and how we're also contributing to that situation. And if we can just pause there and take a moment to look at, okay, well, what am I making this mean? Why am I interpreting it this way? What am I experiencing? And actually take radical responsibility for your own feelings and beliefs and patterns and habits and all the things, to act differently and to create a bit of a distance from the situation and from the trigger or from the emotion, then that's a radical step that someone can do.
Radical step.
It's a radical step. It might seem like a big step, but you can, we can start doing it small, and we all start somewhere, right? So small, when you're doing it all the time, when you start doing it even in small situations, you end up developing that habit of taking responsibility for what is creating the suffering in that moment.
Yes. One of the things I tell my clients when I work with them is this exactly. But sometimes it's hard to know exactly how do you start that process. And I just invite people to begin having awareness. Like, you don't have to change anything right away. Just start to notice. Now that you've heard us say this, how did you start to notice, oh, I'm really like putting the blame on someone else, on this situation, on them for doing this to me? Just start to notice, like, whoa, I didn't even know I was doing that so often. And then if you're noticing this is happening, then I invite you to actually take some space. So a lot of times we feel this trigger come up of like, oh, I want to put it out there. It's somebody else's fault. And instead of doing that, just stepping back and saying, oh, you know what? I need to use the bathroom for a moment, or I need a cigarette break, even if you don't smoke. It's a great social excuse to step outside. Or I just need to grab some fresh air, or I forgot something in the car. Like, there's so many different things you can come up with to move your energy from that space and give yourself a moment to just reflect on what's going on and feel what's actually happening to your energy when you're starting to put that out there. It's just a very different small thing you can do to move into that. So when you're in this situation, I can see from the external side how that can have a huge impact on just starting to take that radical self-responsibility. What about the inside? What about the internal? What about the internal? Like you said external and internal. What do you got? What else do you have?
Well, this was the internal, because this is going inward, right? So this is taking responsibility for yourself as opposed to pointing a finger and looking at, oh, what are people doing to me? Or what is the situation doing to me? Or what is the government doing to me? You name it, right? Yep. So as opposed to doing that, you go inwards and think, okay, like, how am I contributing to the situation? What is my responsibility in the situation that is contributing to the outcome that I don't want, right? And how can I change that within me? So that's the internal route. And I would say in terms of the external, I always bring this back to, right, when I coach my clients as well, to changing your energy and shifting your energy and actually elevating your energetic state and frequency. And I think one of the most important ways to do that is for us to tap into our own joy and creativity and having fun.
Yeah.
And a lot of us just simply forget to have fun. Like, we're getting into this day-to-day grind, the routine, the thing that keeps us safe and that we get used to, and we're quite in it, right? But then what happens is we forget to have fun, or we save the fun for the weekend, or we save the fun for the holiday, or for whatever that special occasion. But fun and joy should be something that we experience every day, even if it's something small. And this is something that I recently had to really get back into, is to start practicing, like getting out of my normal routine and allowing myself some space in the day to just do something just because I like it. Just because I enjoy it. And one of a really good examples, and a really simple example, was drawing. I used to draw as a child. Like, I actually look at, like, my grandma saved all my stuff from like almost 40 years ago now. And I look at all the things that I've created, like I used to do with my hands, or I used to write poems, I used to draw and paint and do all these things. I'm like, when did I forget to do that? Like, when did I stop doing it? I loved it. When did I stop doing it, and why?
Yeah.
And so if we can just go back to doing something really simple that maybe sparks some creativity or uses our right brain, right, and actually gets us into a different state of thinking that we actually enjoy, perhaps drawing, perhaps sketching, perhaps like literally anything that we can do with our hands, something that's creative, that can really elevate our state of not just consciousness, but how we're showing up in the world, because we're allowing ourselves to have fun. And that is also claiming that you're worthy of having fun. You're worthy of taking time for yourself. And this is a massive barrier for women I work with. I work with professional women over 40 who are really, you know, they got that shit together. They're running households and families and businesses and teams, and they forget to have fun.
Yeah.
They forget that they can give themselves permission to actually pause and rest and enjoy all the things that they're working for and have worked for.
Yes. I love it. You just reminded me of some different stories, because, you know, I think when you're in the personal development work or that's part of your life calling, which I feel like that's kind of just part of my life calling, is constantly be learning more and absorbing more and then be able to share with the world. I think this is one of the key pieces you come across. It's like, how do you really come into yourself again and allow yourself this pleasure, this fun, this really being with you? And I invited a couple of my clients to do so. And I always ask them to just send me pictures of what is fun for you. And sometimes it's really hard to discover what it is. And I love to give these examples of drawing and stuff. And I encourage you to go back even earlier than that. When you were like a toddler, what did you love doing? Because that can be some of the craziest stuff. And I just had this one day, I got a picture of a giant bubble, like a bubble castle in the dishes sink. And I was like, what was going on? He's like, I was just doing what I normally do. I was like mindlessly washing the dishes and thinking about work. And then I remembered that I could give myself permission to have fun. And in that moment, I was like, what does my inner child, my little boy inside want to do? He's like, and he could just hear this voice, like there's something inside of him, like, build bubble castle. And next thing I know, he's like pouring the bubbles in and making this huge thing. And he's like, it became like a meditation, a playful meditation. I spent probably 35 minutes playing with bubbles. This is a top executive, right? And it was so meaningful for him. And it opened up new pathways of creativity and for him. It was just so fun to hear about. And next thing I know, like, he's tapping into his inner naughty teenager, and at one point he sent me a picture of a giant snow thing, he took all the snow in his yard, and he decided his inner teenager really wanted to make a giant snow penis, because he never would have been allowed to do that as a child. So he made this giant penis, and I'm like dying laughing, like, of course. So you never know what's going to come out when you're unleashing this playfulness. So here we go. How do you tap into that? I think it's beautiful. Spot on.
Do you remember we went on a retreat together, on a health retreat? And remember when I was showing you my moth that I was drawing? I was drawing a moth on my iPad. And I felt like a child. I was like, hey, can you look at my moth?
It was so beautiful. I still can't believe you drew that. Like
and it's like, what can you find that just brings you joy just for the sake of having joy? Like, it doesn't have to be drawing. It can literally be anything. It could be a freaking bubble, whatever, castle from dishwashing. So like, it doesn't have to be anything really serious or simple or planned or anything like that. It can be really simple things. But I think the biggest obstacle from people doing that is actually not giving themselves permission and not feeling worthy of actually taking that time of, I can take 5 minutes, 25 minutes, or an hour of my day to just actually enjoy myself and prioritize me.
Yeah.
Because we have this idea that this is selfish.
Yeah.
But that's actually the opposite. Because when we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not able to show up at our best self. We're not able to show up as our best version, the most energetic, the most confident, the most joyful self, because we subconsciously resenting the people around us because we feel tired, drained, and we're doing all these things for everybody else, and we're not doing anything for ourselves. And a lot of the time, we're actually not actually feeling worthy of that.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I'm like, oh, I've been there. I can feel that. And I can feel those times. And like, it's not like once you become enlightened into self-love and self-care, all of a sudden it goes away. It's like you have to continually make space for it, right? Like, I got 2 kids. I know when I have not been doing the self-love and self-care, because I find that I'm more irritated around them, right? And I get to spend time with them, and I just want to be checking my phone to be more productive, right? And it's those moments when I can now catch myself and be like, oh, I'm like trying to grab my phone all the time. What am I running from? And how can I just be really present and like be with them? They know how to be present and have fun. And I just get to like be with them. It's really great. So yay. So good. So good.
And the reason why I just guess one more thing to that, just
go ahead.
The reason why I'm like so aware of this now, and it's so present and so alive right now, is because I recently went through an experience where I had such a hard time giving myself permission to just rest and do nothing.
I think I got to see some of that.
You did. You sure did. I've been running a successful coaching business for the last 8 years. It's my passion. I love it. And I pride myself on working hard. Well, I used to. And recently I've been going through a bit of a transition, making some changes to my business. And in the midst of that, I decided to take some time to take a break and take time off. And sometimes I take a few days off here and there and just get away and enjoy myself somewhere. And I'm actually now taking a couple of weeks and a couple of months off. But boy, I tell you, those first 2 days or the first few days of just sitting on the beach and doing nothing, I was like, all these stories and these ideas coming into my consciousness and in my field about, what are you doing? Why not being productive? How dare you sitting here drinking a coconut on a Wednesday and not working? Like, who are you to do that? Why? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Something's going to like fall in your lap if you're not working hard. Like all these things. And I was like, wow, like people must go through that every day, all the time, when they're not, like my clients, when they're not able to give themselves that permission. So it's real, and we go through that too. It's just, it's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Thank you for bringing it up. Is there, tuning in just to what this event is all about, we're starting to run close to time, but is there anything else that you wanted to share with people who are listening?
It's already time. I feel like we just started.
I
think the main message that I wanted to get across today is just this reclaiming the worthiness to just do things for yourself and actually do things that you enjoy. That I think I cannot emphasize that. And I cannot emphasize that, you know, when you sit down to say, do that thing, or if you don't know what to even do, because that's also a thing. Like when I ask people, okay, so like, what is the thing that you do for just fun or as a hobby or as just for the sake of doing it? And they don't know what it is that they might want to do. It's like, okay, well, brainstorm, like sit down and like brainstorm ideas. What are the things that you say used to enjoy as a child, or used to enjoy even just 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or before you got married or before you had kids? What were the things that you used to do when you were single and you had all the time and freedom to do whatever the hell you wanted? Like, what are those things? And just like list these ideas and write them down. And which is the one that like brings you joy or excitement and expansion when you think of that thing?
Yeah. Yes.
And
yes.
And it could be really something really, really simple, or it could be something that you've been thinking about doing, but you haven't done. I'm in a mentoring group. I have a coach, I have a year-round coach. And in that program, it's a group program. There's a lady who is 65 and she just started doing ballet.
Awesome.
Legend. Total legend, right? She's always wanted to, you know, dance, and she's always wanted to do ballet, but she never had a chance. She was raising kids, she was doing all these things, and now she's 65 and she's doing ballet.
It's incredible.
And yeah, right.
I also just want to, I want to like highlight one other thing that you shared with me before we started recording, because I thought this was also like 65 in a self-development program is already amazing. And then on top of it, ballet, amazing. And then you had a personal story before this of you flew home to take care of your grandma who's not been feeling well, who really needed some support. And she's 87 years old, and she's been open to her granddaughter, showing her a whole new way of living that is more healthy and pleasurable. It may not feel like pleasurable in the moment as you're learning how to eat without gluten and dairy and all. But you know, the fact that a box of green juice showed up and she was like, and then she tried it and was like, oh, I really like this, you know? And the fact that you said, and she sits and watch you meditate, and now she's asking questions about like 87. That is freaking incredible. It is incredible. Like I cannot imagine seeing that with my parents happen, let alone my grandparents. So like, wow. Yeah. And so you're never too old, right?
I think it's really, actually, you're never too old. And I think it's really about being the example, because I actually arrived and my grandma was, as much as she was looking forward to seeing me, she was also actually a little bit stressed, because I used to be really, I would just get my way. Like if I had an idea about something, that would just what would happen. And she was afraid that I had like a full-on schedule outline as to what we're going to do, what I'm going to take her, what I'm going to force her to do and force her to change. And she was like, part of her was actually really stressed about that. And she shared that with me after we spent the whole day together. And I showed her the things that I do. And I just shared a bit about, you know, these things that we were just talking about, and a different perception of a different way of looking at things. And she was like, you know what? I just see how you have changed so much. She's like, I was afraid that you were coming and you were gonna like crack the whip on me, but you've become so soft and so gentle and so like compassionate and patient. And I think that is the reason why she's receptive to any of the things that I'm presenting to her, because she sees that it's made a change. Like making these changes in my life has created a positive shift in me. And she's seeing that. And she's like, okay, tell me about meditation. When she walks into the room and I'm meditating in the morning and she's like, tell me about this meditation. Maybe I try it. And we were doing, she had some things, actually, this was so beautiful. I really want to share this. The first day I got here, she was sharing me about her mental state, which has been really, really challenging for the last 2 years because she's been in lockdown. And this is probably very similar to most of what these people who are watching this are going to have experienced, because you can't go out. There's so much fear. There's just a lot of limitations. And she's been stuck with, sitting around and listening to TV or listening to her own thoughts and her own ideas. And she had these stories that she held on to for 40 years about two people that she's done something to in her lifetime. And she wouldn't let this go. And she's like, I'm tormented by this every day. She's like, I'm like, it's on my mind every single day. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, grandma, like all these things, all these emotions that you're feeling every day, they have an impact on your physical health.
Yeah.
So I explained that to her, and we did a somatic process, actually, like a somatic process of her feeling these emotions and like really allowing this to manifest in her body.
Wow.
And then receiving the messages from this specific thing that actually came up. And it was so amazing to watch her entirely, her face shifting, her energy shifting, her emotional state shifting, just by being compassionate with herself and actually feeling those emotions. And if there's something Grandma. I really want to share, my grandma is a legend. But if there's something that I really want to share, is not be afraid to feel the emotions.
Yes.
This is something I've been terrified of personally for like most of my life. And I became really hard and harsh and like built this wall around me so that I wouldn't get hurt and I wouldn't feel hurt and I wouldn't feel those tender feelings that come up for us time to time, or sometimes for a long time. But if we can actually allow ourselves to feel whatever it is that we're feeling, that is the gateway to overcoming those feelings.
Yeah.
Rather than suppressing them, repressing them, shove it under the carpet, not dealing with it, or I'll deal with it later kind of thing. No, that is what creates like physical illness in the body and heaviness in the body and physical conditions that will manifest like pain in the body when we're not allowing ourselves to feel those emotions, whether they're good, bad, terrible, neutral, the whole full spectrum of feelings.
Yes. And it's so, all your feelings are valid. You don't have to justify them. You don't have to defend them. You don't have to come up with a story of why you have them. Just this acknowledgement of the feelings. And you can be super complex. You can contain multitudes. You can be feeling sad and happy and angry and like everything all at one time. And I think people don't even realize that. It's like, I should choose one thing and know logically why I feel that way and where it came from. I'm like, just feel it. Just feel it and let it start to move through you, because it's so stuck there and our brains can't work their way through it as much as we want to try. And the fact that you can do that with your grandma is freaking amazing.
I know, it was such a gift to be able to give that to her. And what's crazy, she's 87 now, and she said, she's like, I never allowed myself to feel that. Like I didn't know how. And I was like, wow, how many people go through life every day, not be able to be so disconnected from their feelings and not being able to know what to do with these feelings. I know I've spent my life doing that. And now I'm really passionate about helping people and helping women feel their feelings and become comfortable with their emotions and actually let their emotions guide them to what they need to or get to figure it out so that they can release extra weight. Because the weight that people hold on to is also emotional, right? It's emotional weight, it's emotional baggage that manifests in physical fat and extra layers.
Yep. Wow. You're amazing. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad you invited me.
All of this. Speaking of sharing your magic, do you have any free things you want to share with people who are tuning in today?
Super happy to. Yeah, I have a training. It's a free training. It's a 1 hour master class that I did, and it's on the different weight loss strategy that I teach, which is the feminine way, which is really about the emotions and really about looking at what is holding you back and how you can use your body as the gateway to figure it out what is the thing that's holding you back, because the body and extra weight is not the problem, it's actually the gateway. So this 1 hour training will help you just regain your confidence, energy levels, and just ditch the diet, because that stuff does not work. So
Yeah.
if that
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
helpful, then I've given you the link, and I will be happy to share that with your tribe
I
and
love it.
anyone.
Thank you so much. And if I don't identify as a female, can I still watch it?
If not a female, send it to a mom, a wife, a sister, anyone
Awesome.
that would enjoy it. I really only work with women, so that's kind of yeah.
Great. That's great. Yep. And I, a lot of times when I do I don't know if you would encourage this, but when I have done courses that are designed specifically for a certain demographic, having a different demographic tune in just to get ideas of how these other people, this other group of people might be thinking or feeling or experiencing life can be really helpful, just to have awareness. Like, oh, it's a totally different way of doing things than I would have approached it. So it's out there. I'm going to share with everybody. And I'm so excited. Thank you for sharing this. And
You're
how do people
welcome.
follow you? I'll put all your links everywhere, but just in case anybody's listening, how can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is a really good place where I share my day-to-day and behind the scenes as well. And that's the Lean Body Coach.
Great.
And that's the same as my website, theleanbodycoach.com.
Amazing. Nick, thank you so much. Anything else before we wrap up?
I think, if you get me started on a tangent, I can go down on it for 45 minutes. So,
this was already packed with so much goodness. Thank you, my dear. It's always a pleasure getting to hang out with you. Have an amazing time with your grandma, and can't wait to hear more stories. Thank you for sharing all of this today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.